Welcome to Pivot Point Strategy for Change. I'm your host, Nick Michael. Each week on this podcast, we explore one simple but powerful question. What happens when life forces you to change and you actually do? For some people, a pivot point is emotional, a heartbreak, a loss, a realization. But for today's guest, the pivot point was physical. Her body broke down and then taught her how to heal. We often think of healing as something that comes from the outside, from pills, plans, or protocols. But what if the power to heal was already inside you, and all you needed was to turn it back on? My guest today is Michal LeBaron. She is the founder of Chronic Illness Solution, and her story is nothing short of remarkable. Years ago, Michal was bedridden, her body collapsing under the weight of autoimmune and genetic disorders. Doctors had no answers. Every protocol failed, but she refused to accept that this was the end of her story. What she discovered wasn't just a treatment, it was transformation. By working with the nervous system itself, the body's stress and healing control center, Michal found a way not to just manage her illness, but to fully heal. And now she's helping others do the same, turning off the chronic stress response, allowing the body to repair, and redefining what true recovery looks like. Her pivot point didn't just heal her body, it gave her a mission. Michal, welcome to Pivot Point Strategy for Change. It's so wonderful to have you here. I'm very excited. You know, I realize that you may certainly have had numerous pivot points throughout your life, moments that shaped you in profound ways. But for our listeners, tell us about a pivot point that stood out for you most, one that changed your relationship with yourself, with your body, and it changed in a lasting way, and that we can all learn from and be inspired by. And of course, as I'm sure there are other powerful moments along your journey, we'll have to talk again in the future to explore those also. But I'm very excited to hear from you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored and excited to share my story. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored and excited to share my story and talk about what that was for me. For me, I had many different repeating pivot points, and it really was the decision to heal. And I remember sitting in a recliner after many, many months and even years of searching for the answers as to why I was sick and nobody knew what was wrong with me. And I remember a decision that I made without even speaking a word that was, I am choosing to heal and I'm choosing to get better and I'm going to do it. And I didn't know how, and I didn't know what that looked like, and I didn't know how long that journey would be, but it was an inner decision that I made. I am doing this. And everything then just started lining up in my life from that moment that I just made the decision. I'm not giving up and I'm going to continue this until I figure it out. Yeah, up to the point I made the decision, I was feeling pretty hopeless. And I had already tried everything, quote unquote, and explored so many different options and experienced so many failures. And I believe it was actually my dad that asked me that day, like, hey, are you feeling better? And I got angry that he asked me because I actually asked him, please stop asking me that question, because the answer is always no. And I can't stand that. And so he had this reaction to it. He's like, okay, I'll back off. I won't ask you that question, I guess. I was very cranky. I apologized. But it caused me to really look at where I was at. And I felt in myself a resignation and an apathy almost, a hopelessness. And from that, I had to decide, okay, this is either the way that it's going to continue, or I'm going to just to re-engage with myself in a new way and just decide that I'm not giving up on myself and I'm going to do whatever it takes to heal. When I made that choice, there was like a determination and energy. Like that's just, it's as if the hopelessness is kind of like, there's nothing I can do. And then there was just this energy or this drive, I'm going to do this, period. We're doing it. Yeah, prior to that time, I felt like my body was broken. I felt like my body had betrayed me. I felt confused and powerless to change it. I felt like something was wrong with me. Maybe I'm the problem. It's, other people can heal. I don't know why I can't heal. after that deciding point, and all these doors started opening, and I began to see that my body can heal and that I can trust it, and that even the symptoms that it's exhibiting are telling a story. And so it's actually like communicating with me, like it's partnering with me to show me stuff that's going on inside that I need to resolve. And so it actually became a partner, a friend, a teacher, and I began to view it very differently. So I no longer felt broken. I felt like I was guided and like I could actually understand what my body was saying and how I could interact with it in an effective way. And as soon as I began to do that, I just became incredibly grateful for the gift of my body and for the ability to understand what it was actually saying.
So, as you progressed, how did your expectations for your own healing shift? Were there new beliefs or mantras that carried you through?
Yes, definitely. I feel like my entire perspective of life, like the paradigm that I viewed life through, had to shift, and it was shifting in the healing journey. And if I were to describe that in an overarching way, it really was from a survival based, victim based, reactive based paradigm. Even though I had done tons of personal development and I knew about victim mentality and I cared very much about taking responsibility, I was still in an overarching way of relating to life as a victim and relating to my health as a victim. And I didn't even know how to view it any other way. And as I began to heal and to regulate, I began to see that I really do create my experiences. I actually create my inner stress and my inner turmoil in how I show up for myself in life. So, yes, face hard things in life, face stresses, we face things we're responsible for and have to manage. But how do I support myself in that experience? Do I care about myself? Do I nourish myself with food? Do I push myself beyond the point of exhaustion and into burnout? Do I have grace for myself when I make mistakes? Am I my greatest cheerleader? Am I my best friend? Or do I treat myself worse than I would anyone else? And so by shifting the way that I interacted with myself, that is what actually communicated with my body, whether it was safe in my presence and in my life or not. Yeah. Yep. The part when I really began to trust my body was when I realized and learned how my body works, that it's actually my nervous system that creates symptoms when it knows something is out of kilter in my life or in my body. And so when I learned that the nervous system is intentionally and actively creating a symptom to get my attention, I realized I should probably pay attention. It's like, when the gas light comes on in your car, we don't usually freak out. We know what to do. And so if we ignore what we're supposed to do and we push it until we have 2 miles left, maybe we do have some anxiety. But when we do what we know to do and it makes sense, there's no anxiety, there's no negativity. I'm not doom looping in my head about, oh, I need to put gas in my car. I know what to do, right? So the same thing happened when I learned the language of my body, that I wasn't duct taping over the gas empty light anymore. I was saying, oh, I know what to do. And so that really had my thoughts change from, oh my gosh, something's wrong. I don't know what it is. How bad is it going to get? And how is this going to impact my life? And will I ever get better? Instead, the dialogue was, oh, this is interesting feedback. I wonder, I'm curious, right? I'm curious. What is my body communicating with me? What can this teach me about what I might not be addressing in my life? Maybe I've said yes to too many things and my body, maybe I people pleased when I said yes and my body knows it and it's saying, hey, hold on, wait a second, something is off balance here. And so my thoughts about how grateful I was for my body's feedback was so great that at one point I was like, well, what am I going to do when I don't have symptoms? Because my symptoms became an ally to align every part of my life with what's healthy for me. And so I was like, well, what if I don't have my symptoms to alert me anymore? What am I going to do? And of course, I don't need my symptoms to do that. My self-awareness does that now. But I just remember being so grateful for them that I didn't even hope that they left my life. I was gaining so much clarity and so much education from my body, and that I just found it incredibly useful.
How did learning about this change your beliefs about illness and recovery, not just physically, but mentally? How did that turn out for you?
So I had explored functional medicine and a lot of holistic things, nutrition, and so many other things, dozens and dozens of things, prior to learning about the power of my nervous system. And I thought that I was addressing the root cause. Oh, it's food allergies. Oh, it's leaky gut. Oh, it's toxins in the environment, whatever, right? All these things that we can blame for our symptoms. And when I learned about the nervous system, what I realized is an imbalance in the regulatory systems in our body is the real root cause underneath every other thing I can blame for my symptoms. So it's like, oh, I have food allergies, but why? That's not normal. It's not the food. Other people can eat that food. So what is going on in my system that has me unable to eat that food and has my immune system be whacked out, so to speak? And so when I learned that the body can heal itself, we are told that. We produce billions of cells every second. There's no reason why we should have ongoing illness if we can replace 75% of our body in 6 months. When I learned that the body can only heal itself when it is in a regulated state, when every cell is in a state to regenerate, to function optimally, and to heal anything in the body, that's when my body can heal itself. So that became the one goal that I had, is how do I live in the parasympathetic nervous system, not just use a tool or modality to like do stress relief for a few minutes, but how can I actually live there 24/7? How can I get my body to produce its own medicine 24/7? Because that's better than any diet, supplement, protocol, plan, whatever external thing I can do. So understanding that really helped me narrow in on what my goal was around the nervous system work. And within 3 months, I was eating any food, some of which I had anaphylactic reactions to. I was off all my supplements, I was off meds, and all my lab tests came into the normal range. So I think that's when I realized, oh my gosh, the power of my nervous system on every single cell in the body is, I can't even tell you how powerful it is. It's just like, that's literally where the power is, all of it. And so me learning to control my nervous system and regulate my nervous system and live in a regulated state really is now my number one priority for my health. So it shifted how I view everything else. I'm not worried about toxins in the environment. I'm not worried about not getting enough nutrients in my food. It just really shifted everything. I worry about, I don't worry, but I focus on my nervous system regulation and my state of being that I'm showing up to life with.
What emotions were the most difficult?
I think the fear was immense. I remember laying in bed because I was bedridden for a few years, in immense pain and just my body not functioning, and thinking to myself, like, gosh, I wish I could get an answer as to what's wrong. An answer would be better than not knowing. Like, I don't even care if it's like, you have 6 months to live and it's cancer. Just knowing that would mean that I could navigate my life in a new way. And not knowing what was wrong was incredibly scary. And after so many tests and so many protocols and everything failing and not having any answers, I think the hopelessness and the fear together was overwhelming.
How did your relationships change, though, during your illness?
My relationships definitely changed for many reasons. My mom had to caretake me, including like help me walk, help me bathe at times because I was losing function in my body. So that is an incredibly vulnerable position to be in. I know that a lot of my friends and family did not understand what was going on because I didn't have an answer as to what was going on. Was I making it up? Right. And so I really saw the relationships that mattered and that were real rose to the top. The other ones had to fade away. And as I began to heal my relationship with myself and deal with some of those deep-seated insecurities, limiting beliefs about myself, fears, and my people-pleasing tendencies and my codependency tendencies and all of that, I noticed that as I became a healthy person, how I showed up in my relationships changed. So the health within me began to reflect in my relationships and in the kinds of people I attracted in my life and in the kinds of relationships that I had. So they were built on healthy habits and not destructive habits. I think from my decision to heal, I chose to seek out to trust my body. I chose to seek out things that would take me to the next step of healing. And that was my focus. In the time before I made that choice, and it was just nothing but fear and trying to figure things out, I did feel like I had a loss of identity because I couldn't do the same things I was doing. This reminds me of a time after I actually had a traumatic brain injury. And again, I wasn't able to do any of my normal routines or rhythms. I wasn't able to work. I wasn't able to, reach out to people. I wasn't able to drive my car. And so it's interesting to me how much that reveals how much of our identity is wrapped up in the things that we do and the status that we have and the routines that we have. really forces a person to go inward and be okay with themselves as they are without being able to perform and without being, have any external validation. So I think embracing the opportunity in that is what got me through it, of just being with myself and being with my feelings.
Was there a particular moment when compassion, self-compassion, or for yourself helped you begin to heal? Was that a point there? Because we all talk about compassion, and we know that as a concept, to really, for many, having compassion for themselves really begins, with the healing process. I was just curious about that for you.
Totally. I think without self-compassion, I would not be where I am. And I know that that has come up for me so many times as a pattern of being hard on myself or trying to force myself to heal or try to do it faster or try to do it better.
Yeah.
I had to learn the self-compassion in those moments. And I think of, everything that we do, whether it's in our heads, in our inner dialogue, or whether it's something physical we're doing for ourselves, every choice we make is a choice that leads to stress and shows ourselves that we don't matter and we're not safe to be with. Or that, like with self-compassion or self-love or grace or tenderness, like however I want to parent myself gently, every choice I make from that perspective to support myself and show myself, I love you, I value you, you are important to me, I'm here for you no matter what, I'm accepting of you. When I show myself those things, that actually communicates to my nervous system. So
Yes.
part of me learning to live in a regulated state is living
Yes.
with self-compassion.
So what emotions returned or surfaced as your body started to heal? Was there joy, fear, or of relapse, or any disbelief, like I can't believe it, or
I think all the emotions surfaced in the journey of healing, kind of like in waves, right? Or in like up and down, up and down, up and down. So I would have to feel through, past traumas. I would have
Right.
to feel through the reality of, the loss that I didn't have this information sooner and how much suffering did I go through seeking these answers, right? Like, oh my gosh, if I would have found this 12 years ago, it would have saved me so much time and money, and probably friendships and life opportunities, right? So being willing to feel through any emotion is actually one of the regulating concepts I learned. Like, how can I hold space for whatever is coming up for me, both the negative, quote unquote, and positive? And so I noticed that I used to be in a habit of suppressing my emotions. And so I started kind of with the negative ones because you think those are the ones you suppress. But I noticed I suppressed the positive ones.
The positive,
so
yeah.
much. So I actually had to learn how to feel joy. And when I first became healthy, I didn't believe it. And I did have
the whole disbelief factor. Yeah.
yeah. I'm like, well, is this really true? And how long
Yes.
is it going to last? And mess it all up. And
Yes.
yeah.
So how do you now regulate when your body sends stress signals? What does emotional safety feel like inside of you today?
Yeah. How I regulate is by first holding space for my feelings and being slowed down enough to recognize it. I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. Oh, okay. I used to just push right through that and, like be intellectually, how do I fix this and keep going and doing all these things? And maybe if I go faster, it'll all get done faster, right? And that's never the case. So it's actually learning to slow down, to take those moments of pausing and to feel what's coming up. And so feeling my feelings is number one. And number two, I actually ask myself and my body and my nervous system, what is the next right thing for me to do? Like, that's it. What do I do right now? What is the next right thing to support myself? What is in my highest and best good? What is the decision that's going to help me go through this and be more at peace? That doesn't mean I emotionally bypass. It just means, okay, I'm overwhelmed. How can I support myself in that experience? If I were my best friend, what advice would I give her, right? And then do that for myself. And so what it feels like now to be able to hold that safe space for myself where I can handle anything and that I know myself as strong and resilient and capable and that I'm here with myself. So it's almost like that self-trust it has been built. And I lost my self-trust along with my body trust, right? And so, and I couldn't trust anybody else either. Now it's like I've built that trust with myself. And I even think to myself when thoughts might come up, oh no, what if this thing happens? Or what if that thing happens? Well, I know that I'm going to be there and I'm going to show up and I'm going to do my best. And I'm going to actually be mindful through the process. And I'm going to ask my body these good questions. And I'm going to make the best decisions that I can. And I know that I will do that. So that gives me a lot of inner peace that nothing can take away, because I know how to show up my best and I know that I'm reliable for it.
So you've talked about, I wanted to hear about this. You've talked about regulation, and what role does mindfulness or awareness play in reframing the brain's response to stress and pain? How have you noticed that for you?
Yes, I would say those are synonyms. So most people I think of regulation as I did deep breathing and now I feel calmer.
Right.
I view regulation as calibration, like I am expanding my capacity to be with whatever experience comes up and to be with it in a conscious way. And so to me, mindfulness is actually what communicates to the nervous system that I have it handled. So it doesn't need to go into a survival process. And the more I expand my awareness out of those survival habits, like apathy or anger or fear or, pride or any of those lower ego-y things, the more I expand out of that into integrity and acceptance and reason and love and peace and a higher perspective, my nervous system actually knows that I am more aware. And the more awareness I have, the less the nervous system has to take upon itself to survive something. So I would say they're directly correlated. The slower I am, the more awareness I have, the more conscious I am, the more awareness I have, the more regulated I am.
Well put. Hearing you describe it is so useful for all of our listeners that I'm so pleased to hear you say that. So how do you balance science with intuition? The logic of biology and the wisdom of your inner knowing, science, your inner gut.
I'm still in a process of balancing those,
Yeah.
but I can
well said.
say from my experience, when I ask myself, and when I say that, I get still and quiet enough that I can actually discern an answer, right? So it's like, is it in my highest and best good to go to this thing I was invited to? Or is it my highest and best good to decline? And I can feel those responses in my body. So I've been trusting my body over other things for many years. And what I've noticed is that the wisdom of my body and the wisdom of my nervous system and of my intuition is actually so tuned in more than my conscious mind, my logical thinking mind is. And it can perceive things that I normally would be unaware of. So every time I have followed that intuitive nudge of what is highest and best, like for everybody involved, even if it logically didn't make sense, 100% of the time, I have always seen how logically, after the fact, it was the exact perfect thing to do. And so to me, nothing in the intuitive realm has ever contradicted something that was scientifically valid or logically wise. And it has always ended up proving that both go hand in hand. But I think when I'm trying to intellectually figure out the scientific way or the logical thing to do, I'm actually missing things because we're only conscious of like less than 10% of things, right? Our unconscious, our subconscious is over 90%. So when I'm tapping into my nervous system's responses, I'm actually tapping into that 90% of everything that my body and mind and consciousness is perceiving. And I'm making a decision from there, which is usually a much larger picture than my narrow, limited, logical thinking mind.
Well said. Many people get stuck in mental loops, as you know, around their illness. They scan for symptoms, they catastrophize, they over-exaggerate, they're looking to identify symptoms and identify as being sick. How did you break from that loop? Because that's a large piece of the healing process, I imagine.
This was not easy to do.
Yeah.
But I made a rule with myself that for at least 3 months, I was not going to monitor my symptoms at all. And I focused solely on regulating my nervous system and going through a healing process. And I said, I am not even evaluating my symptoms until later. They're going to fluctuate. They're going to change. I'm literally not going to monitor them anymore. And I know people fight that so much when I tell them that. But it really was the best thing that I could do because when I'm focused on the symptoms, I am in a mental loop. But when I'm focused on what I can do to become a healthy person, to regulate, to do the work in that realm, that's actually where my body can heal. So it's like you can be triggered by your triggers. You can be anxious about anxiety. You can be depressed about your depression. You can be overwhelmed by your overwhelm. And that's a reinforcing loop. Whereas if you can be present with all that's going on and then put your focus where it needs to be, that is the way out of the loop. So I hate to say, in order to get out of the loop, you have to just step out.
Yes.
But you do. You just have to step out as much as you can and redirect your focus to where it needs to be.
Well, so were there physical signals like fatigue, inflammation, or pain that now make sense to you as communication from your nervous system? What were those signals for you?
Completely. All of my symptoms were signals, but it was really helpful when I learned how to work through my own flare-ups, where an old symptom that went away came back, because then it was like just one thing at a time. So one thing was like pain in the arches of my feet. And what I looked at around the patterns around that is they always showed up when I wasn't supporting myself. Imagine that. And I was usually in a rush, like physically. I was like walking quick, or I had a long to-do list. That's another thing I noticed was consistent when the pain in the arches of my feet came back. And I was often focused on someone else. Like, what can I do for this person, my daughter, this other family member? What do we need to do today? And I was just in every single moment where the pain came back, one of these three things was at play. And so I was like, wow, that's cool. Now I know every time that shows up for me, I'm rushing. I'm trying to just get a to-do list done, and I'm not thinking of myself and what I need today. And I'm thinking of other people and people pleasing. And so there were 3 times when that symptom came back, and that was enough for me to become conscious of those patterns. I don't have pain in the arches of my feet. Neither has that pain come back in years. And that's something I've struggled with most of my life. Like, I'd have special shoes and special inserts, and I'd go to like feet doctors to like make the things. And it was a big deal. And now I don't have to do any of that because I changed the underlying pattern, that I'm slowed down. I'm not rushing. My to-do lists are manageable. And I'm not thinking of everyone else first before I fill my own cup in a day.
Amazing. I like the way you made that connection. So how do you stay connected to your body now? Are there daily practices that help you regulate and remain grounded or stay grounded?
Yes, I do. I do those. One of them is a grounding technique. So I take a few deep breaths and I try to become aware of all my senses. And I do that. I started training myself by doing that 5 to 10 times a day for many years. I actually don't have to do that as much because my default is slowed down, but that's where I begin to
That's wonderful to hear that. See, that's what others need to hear, because I go over the grounding technique, especially in Gestalt therapy and acceptance commitment therapy. We talk about just the awareness of the 5 senses. What do you see? What do you smell? What do you hear? What do you taste? You touch. So all of that is somehow difficult for many to embrace, note, and become aware of. So did that take a while for you to master or to start implementing on a regular basis?
Yes. Part of that could be because I'm stubborn.
Okay.
I think I could have gotten it faster if I would have just done it. But that is where I started, and it dramatically made a huge difference for me. Because, and I would also say, but stick with it, because it could take time for it to become your default all the time. Like for me, it was probably 4 years, but I immediately had access to and anytime I felt dysregulated, I could go back to that. And still to this day, I might use that as one of my things. I'm triggered. Let's ground first. That's my first go-to. And then I'm slowed down and I can do the other things I'm talking about. So what I noticed helped the most was paying attention to how I felt before I grounded and then after. And any changes that I experienced in that time showed me how sped up I was. So it was a note to self, okay, I'm still speeding up. I need to slow down more.
Wow. So did you ever have any setbacks or relapses along the way? And how did you physically or mentally handle those moments, whether they were small or long? I'm just curious about.
Yeah. After I became fully healthy, I did have a lot of flare-ups. And I think it's because I was still becoming conscious of a lot of the patterns that were unhealthy for me in my life, or it was easy to go back into old patterns and habits. And so my mental thought process at that point was, maybe it just didn't work. Maybe this is one more thing that's failed, and that was an easy cop-out. And that cop-out would have meant that I just didn't want to keep doing the work. And so I had another deciding factor where I said, well, if I am creating my symptoms and I do control my nervous system, I'm going to see if I can prove this right or wrong. Like I'm just going to go all in and do
Right.
my best. And so I sat down with a notebook and I wrote out the flare ups that I had. And I traced it back to the time when they began. And I found the specific stressors in my life, like those unexpected little pesky things that show up, like the plumbing line broke and I had to deal with that, or like I was going to Zumba and it was canceled and I didn't know about it and I wasted a trip and blah, blah, blah. I found these little triggers that I ignored and I put myself last in and I didn't listen to my intuition in. And I worked to change that pattern. And every single symptom went away as soon as I looked at it, traced it to the trigger, resolved that trigger with a healthy choice, felt my feelings. They all went away. And at that moment, I was like, shiitake mushrooms. That's my way to not cuss. Shiitake mushrooms. Holy cow. I actually do control my symptoms and I do control my nervous system and it is my responsibility. And I don't want to know this because it means I'm responsible. But it was so empowering in that moment to realize, oh, I'm creating a migraine because I didn't want to tell the person no. And so if I
Yes,
have a
yes.
migraine, then I have an excuse to say no. You know what I mean? As soon as you see it, you can't unsee it. And it's been the most empowering journey of my life. I actually only flare up like twice a year now. I
It's
literally live
amazing.
my life symptom free. It's beautiful.
I'm so glad that you articulated that so well. I'm so pleased to have that and for you to have that explain that. But now that you work with others, how do you help them reconnect to their bodies safely, especially when their bodies have been, the sources of pain or the fear? How does that work?
Yeah. I boiled down my journey into simple steps. One is grounding, learning to be grounded, right? The other one is learning to feel our feelings and just hold space and be the observer of our experience rather than be caught up in it and resisting. Another one is learning how to parent ourselves instead of take the easy way out. And it's like if you were watching me, I would do the right thing. But because it's just me and nobody's watching, right? I hit snooze or I throw the clothes on the floor or I don't wash my dish after lunch or I speed in the car because no one's watching, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
It's these things. And so we look at that. We pick one area of life and we look for where we take those shortcuts, those self-defeating behaviors, where we don't feel good about ourselves because we're sneaky, we're being sneaky, and we're letting ourselves off the hook. And so when I step up and I do my best, there is a different feeling I have about myself and who I am. And that actually communicates with my nervous system. See, everything is in order here. Every time I take a shortcut, my brain knows and it knows that I'm being sneaky. Actually
You're
builds.
aware of it now. Yeah.
Yes, and it also communicates like I hear people say all the time, well, no one's watching.
Yeah.
I ask them, are you no one?
Mm-hmm.
You're
Well
saying,
said.
right?
Yes.
So that's a key area is looking at where I can do my best and what that feels like. And it's not perfectionism, it's just my best, right? So that fluctuates throughout my day. And then I look at, okay, how can I look at flare ups and symptoms and actually trace it back to these triggers in my life and where I ignored myself or I was sped up or I, didn't follow my intuition
Yeah.
or I didn't
Yeah.
do the best. And how can I work on that area and take responsibility there and then trust that my body will, heal itself and come into alignment.
Yeah, no, I like the way you're referring to how you make that connection. So, what's the one thing you wish every person struggling with chronic illness could understand about the link between trauma, the nervous system, and healing? What is the one thing that you wish people?
Yeah, it's like it's hard because people's belief systems are so limited that I don't know if they would hear what I would want to really say.
Yeah,
But
I know.
I
I
think
know.
what I want to say
Yeah.
right now is it really is possible to heal and to have the body be in a completely healed state. And the body is already attempting to do that. And there's just certain things that are limiting it. And every person I've ever seen go through a process like I'm describing has become fully healthy in an average of 4 to 6 months. Like it doesn't take years. It doesn't take supplements. It doesn't take these other things. And so if something's not working that people are trying, it's just like, don't give up. It's like
Yes.
there's
Good.
another way.
So, be persistent.
Yeah. And you probably haven't heard about this stuff. So just be open to learning.
So, looking back, what do you now see as the true pivot point, the precise moment when healing became possible for you? What do you identify as that moment? Just generally trying to understand that.
I have thought about this long and hard over the years, and I think it really comes back to the moment in the recliner.
Mm.
Because I really just decided it's an inner choice, and I just decided I'm going to heal. And there was no evidence or proof that that was even possible.
That's it.
Nothing on the outside changed. There were no new practitioners. I just decided I'm doing it. And that is the moment because after the decision was made, my brain could then see every opportunity that it couldn't see before. Like something opened up in my reticular activating system. And all of a sudden, I could see all the things, right? It's like when you buy a new car and you see the car everywhere.
Yes.
That same thing happens. So we have to make an inner choice. I am
Yes.
going to heal. And it's outside our comfort zone always. And it's usually very unknown what the journey's gonna be. But me being willing to say, I'm not staying where I am, that was the most powerful decision always ever that I've ever made in my whole life.
I You have no idea how amazing it is to hear you say this and to have this description from you and how well, again, you have put it. It's exactly what I'm always looking for. And I get so much from hearing this. And this is what I look to have others hear and to inspire them. So I want to thank you for giving that response. It's true to your heart and what you've been doing. It's wonderful. So how has this journey changed how you see yourself, not as a patient, but as a whole human being?
Too many things for me to put into words, but I feel this is the gift of a lifetime to get to be myself and to know who that is and to be constantly discovering it. But it's
Yes.
like now I'm my biggest hobby. And I don't mean that in an egoic way. I'm like, wow, I actually enjoy being myself to be myself. And I want to live in my life, not because it's a fantasy, but because it's not, because it's real. And I want to show up and face challenges and I want to learn and grow through them. And I want to feel everything that comes up in my life. And the ability to navigate life with a sense of peace is like priceless. I feel like that's what people are really wanting. And I think that's just a side benefit of becoming inwardly healthy and not just ability and freedom to be themselves and the ability to discern what is in the highest good and go do it and just see all these magical synchronistic things line up in their lives and to acknowledge and like then the next step is that our passions and our purposes and our callings and the things we love start to like get born and expand and grow. And that's just so beautiful. So that's what I want for people. That's what it's like.
Michal, thank you for sharing your powerful story with us today. Your courage in facing such overwhelming physical, emotional, and mental challenges, and your willingness really to speak openly about them is truly extraordinary. It takes a rare kind of strength to turn pain into purpose and to offer your journey as a source of insight, hope, and healing for others. Deeply grateful that you chose to share this space with us and with our listeners. And we honor the resilience, the vulnerability, and the wisdom that you brought to this conversation. Your story is not only inspiring, it's a gift. I can't thank you enough. I appreciate all that you've offered us and gave us today.
Thank you so much for having me. You are such a wonderful host.
Again, and I look forward to down the road for us to have another opportunity to talk about other pivot points that have come up in your life. So I look forward to continuing to connect with you.
Thank you. Me as well.
Great to meet you.